A single, iron-tipped arrow arches through the smoky afternoon sky over Senlac Hill. In our history, this is the exact projectile that pierces the right eye of King Harald Godwinson, blinding him, shattering Anglo-Saxon England, and delivering the crown to William the Conqueror. But today, the wind shifts. The arrow thuds harmlessly into a thick, 3-foot lindenwood shield. Behind that wall of wood, Harald stands tall. He raises his heavy, two-handed Danish battle axe. He roars a command, and 7,000 exhausted English warriors dig their iron-shod boots into the bloody mud. The famous Norman fake retreat fails to lure them down the hill. Instead, the Saxon shield wall remains an unbroken fortress. When Duke William of Normandy makes one last desperate charge to break the line, his horses cut down. In the chaos, a Saxon housecarl swings his axe, crushing the Duke's helmet. The Norman invaders break. They run for their lives, back to the wet sands of the English Channel. Anglo-Saxon England has done the impossible, they have survived. But to understand how we got here, and how this single afternoon would completely erase the modern world as we know it, we have to look at the terrifying, impossible math the English king was forced to solve. Rewind to September 1066. King Harald is sitting in London, and he is facing a strategic nightmare of civilizational proportions. He is caught in a deadly geopolitical pincer. To his north, the legendary Viking giant Harald Hardrada has landed in Yorkshire with 300 longships, spilling thousands of battle-hardened warriors onto English soil. To his south, Duke William has assembled 700 transport vessels, packed with the finest heavy cavalry in Europe, waiting for a southerly wind to cross the channel. Harald has to move. He marches his army a grueling 185 miles north in just 4 days. It is a stunning feat of military logistics. At the Battle of Stamford Bridge, Harald catches the Vikings by surprise. The fighting is savage, but the English emerge completely victorious. Hardrada is killed. The Viking threat to England is ended, permanently. Out of those 300 longships, only 24 are needed to carry the survivors home. If you were in Harald's boots right now, would you have marched immediately back south to confront the Normans, or stayed in London to recruit fresh troops? Tell me in the comments, because his choice changed everything. Harald chooses speed over caution. He marches his men another 190 miles south to meet the Norman threat. But here is the silent tragedy of Stamford Bridge. It was a spectacular victory, but it cost Harald nearly 1,000 of his elite housecarls. His army is heavily depleted, and his men are running on pure adrenaline and sheer exhaustion. On the morning of October 14th, the two armies finally lock eyes near Hastings. Duke William commands an army of heavy cavalry, high-tech crossbowmen, and professional mercenaries. Harald has a defensive wall of infantry, packed tightly along a ridgeline just 1.2 kilometers long. For hours, the Norman cavalry charges up the steep slope, only to be hacked to pieces by Saxon axes. But then, the pivotal moment of our alternate timeline occurs. When the Norman left flank panics and retreats, Harald's brother, Gwrth, holds the line. He does not allow the Saxon soldiers to break ranks and chase them. The shield wall remains locked, dense, and impenetrable. When William attempts his final, desperate assault, his forces are exhausted, and he is slain in the melee. By twilight, the Norman army is completely routed. Harald Godwinson has defended his crown against the two greatest military commanders of his age. It is a moment of pure, euphoric relief. The Saxon kingdom has survived. But this victory is a poisoned chalice. Harald has saved England, but his kingdom is bleeding out. More than half of his nobility lie dead on the battlefield. His treasury is empty. The land is devastated. And worse, across the North Sea, another predator is watching. King Sweyn II of Denmark looks at a shattered, leaderless Norman army and a depleted English king, and he sees an opportunity. Just as Harald's men begin to bury their dead, a scout rides into camp, gasping for breath. A massive new fleet of 240 Danish warships has just been sighted off the coast of the Humber. And Harald has no army left to fight them. But here is where our story takes a sharp, unexpected turn. Instead of another glorious battle, King Harald is forced to play a desperate, high-stakes game of diplomacy. The Danish king, Sweyn Estridsson, has not sailed across the North Sea just to pillage. He is a nephew of the great King Canute, and he claims the English throne as his rightful inheritance. With 240 longships looming off the coast, and Harald's army reduced to a few thousand wounded, exhausted survivors of Hastings, a physical fight is suicide. And this is where we see the true genius of Harald Godwinson. He does not march to war. Instead, he sends an embassy to the Danes with a staggering proposal. What would you do if you were wearing the English crown right now? Would you fight to the bitter end with a ghost army, or buy off the invaders and risk looking weak to your own people? Tell me in the comments, because Harald's decision redefined the borders of Europe forever. Wait until you see what happens when the Vatican hears of Harald's next move. Because to save his people, the Saxon king makes a deal with the devil. Harald offers Sweyn a massive sum of 40,000 pounds of silver, a fortune known as the Danegeld. But he goes further. He offers his own daughter's hand in marriage to Sweyn's son, sealing a permanent alliance between England and Denmark. For a brief, shining moment, there is peace. The Danish longships sail home, not as conquerors, but as brothers in arms. The Saxon soldiers return to their farms, the fields are harvested, and the dead of Hastings are finally laid to rest. It looks like a spectacular victory for English diplomacy. But this alliance triggers a terrifying backlash from continental Europe. Pope Alexander II is furious. In our history, the Pope had blessed Duke William's invasion of England with a holy papal banner, desperate to bring the independent Anglo-Saxon Church under the strict control of Rome. Now, the Pope sees a massive, semi-pagan, Germanic Nordic superpower forming on the western edge of Europe. In early 1068, Rome does the unthinkable. The Pope declares a holy crusade against the Anglo-Danish alliance. This is the peak of our story, the moment where the fate of the Western world hangs in the balance. France, Flanders, and the Holy Roman Empire answer the Vatican's call. By the summer, a colossal fleet of over 500 transport ships, carrying 12,000 heavily armored continental knights, sets sail to crush the Saxon heretics. But Harald and Sweyn are waiting. They do not wait on the beaches this time. The unified Anglo-Danish navy, nearly 400 longships strong, intercepts the Crusader fleet in the narrow, choppy waters of the Dover Straits. It is an absolute maritime slaughter. The heavy continental transport vessels are slow, unmaneuverable, and completely helpless against the lightning-fast Nordic longships. Thousands of French and German knights, weighed down by 60 pounds of iron chainmail, sink straight to the bottom of the English Channel. the water runs red. The Great Catholic Crusade is completely annihilated in a single afternoon. England and the North Sea belong to the Saxons, permanently. By defending his island, King Harald has secured his dynasty. But the world he leaves behind is unrecognizable to us. Without the Norman conquest, the French language never merges with Old English. The 10,000 French words we use today, words like court, peace, soldier, and sovereign, never enter the vocabulary. English remains a pure, guttural, Germanic language, sounding much closer to modern Dutch or Icelandic. There is no French-style feudalism. The English peasantry retains their ancient land rights. The Wittenagemot, the traditional council of Saxon nobles, gradually evolves into a representative parliament centuries ahead of its time, without the bloody barons' revolts that forced the Magna Carta in 1215. The British Empire, born from Anglo-French rivalries, simply never happens. Which brings us back to that single, iron-tipped arrow bouncing off a 3-foot lindenwood shield on Senlac Hill. In our world, we look at Harald's death as a tragedy. But now we see the final, staggering twist. If that arrow had missed, the English language would never have become the global tongue spoken by 1.5 billion people today. The United States, Canada, and Australia as we know them would not exist. By holding his shield high and saving his own life, King Harald Godwinson successfully saved his kingdom, but he accidentally erased the modern world. But what if the Norman invasion was only delayed? Next time, we look at what happens when the desperate descendants of William the Conqueror turn their eyes toward a very different empire, the wealthy, golden shores of Byzantium.